The U.S. Supreme Court heard arguments today in a free speech case.
Abortion protests are at the heart of a First Amendment case.
The law is necessary because some protests got out of hand.
I'm Eric Scheidler. I'm Executive Director of the Chicago-based Pro-Life Action League. And as a pro-life activist, the most common question I'm asked by activists around the country is, where can I protest?
And if you're inclined to support choice, as I am, a precedent set with an anti-choice group is going to apply to me too. And we have to remember that.
They know we've got the numbers. We've got the people, the regular people.
The controversial Scheidler family has been at the center of several protest-related cases. In 1994, the National Organization for Women sued the Pro-Life Action League, arguing that it was using racketeering to shut down abortion clinics. Now lost the case in 2006.
One of our first challenges when this Planned Parenthood facility was coming to the city of Aurora was that the police started to give our people trouble. And we would get the police coming out and giving contradictory instructions. You know, one officer would say, you can't stand on the sidewalk, you have to stand in the grass. 5 hours later, you can't stand on the grass, you have to stand on the sidewalk. So we filed a civil rights lawsuit with the city. We sued them in federal court, and then they decided to ask us for a settlement. So this was a settlement agreement over First Amendment violations where we agreed to certain parameters, and the police acknowledged our right to be there, and we've had peaceable relations ever since.
The First Amendment protects freedom of speech, including the right to protest. But government can still restrict the time, manner, and place of protest.
Well, we recently had an issue with the Aurora police where they had changed their interpretation of this access road. We have this sidewalk counseling and prayer activity going on private property across from Planned Parenthood's facility, where there's this ambiguity about, you know, what kind of authority can be there and who can be there and when they can be there. Today, October 10th, 2015, we have 300 protests going on at Planned Parenthood facilities all over the country that we've organized. They're going to set up all along the roadway there. The road that we're on here, it's a private road, but because it's an easement that the public uses to get to the shopping mall or just to cross through to the other road, they didn't really have any authority to do anything about our being here. Hey, anybody who's here for the Protest PP event, I'd invite you to come down to the corner of New York and Eola. That's where we're setting up, where we've got our signs, and we could really use your help up there. So head on up. You can just walk on through the parking lot to the corner up here. I think the abortion issue is really where the First Amendment gets its toughest test, because many people who are staunch advocates for First Amendment rights become uncomfortable with some of the things that we do in the pro-life movement. It's the messages that we don't want to hear that the Constitution protects in the First Amendment. I'm out there with one of the most unpopular forms of free speech there is, showing abortion photography, these graphic signs out in the public square. You know, I think the pro-life movement is really owed a great debt of gratitude by the entire activist world, because we're the ones who are out there week in, week out. No other movement is really pushing the envelope that aggressively and that consistently and winning in the courts. So, you know, there's a freedom out there to deliver a message that often people don't want to hear, that we're, you know, securing and maintaining for the entire activist movement, left and right, on abortion and every other issue.
My name is Benita Ulisano, and I'm a longtime pro-choice activist in the city of Chicago. And I have been doing clinic escorting on and off since the 90s. I support First Amendment rights, and you know, when they do their campaigns in the Loop, I really have no problem with that. I think they should be treated like any other group who wants to come out and protest. I'm a protester, right? So I can't really say that they should be denied the right to protest. Where I think a fine line is drawn is when it's in front of a medical center, when it's in front of a business like a family planning clinic, or any business for that matter, I think creates a climate of intimidation rather than information.
Sir, we're asking you to step up and be a man to protect that woman. Sir, God's role for the man is for him to protect his family, not bring them into a place of death.
We have the legal point that we protect your rights to protest. And as you know,
what about the children that are being torn apart? How do you protect them?
I'm not happy about that. You and I agree that we know that we cannot storm in there.
I'm not asking you to storm in there. What I'm telling you to do, tell your police to go away and let people on the side there so they can reach those folks.
Okay, so that's what you're asking. Okay, we cannot do that either.
Lots of municipalities have fairly detailed and severe restrictions on First Amendment activity. The Supreme Court is really concerned about discrimination on viewpoint, meaning the state can't favor one point of view over another. Any regulation of freedom of assembly or speech has to be content neutral. The buzzwords they use are reasonable, time, place, and manner restrictions. And when you describe the situation at the clinic, the analogy that comes to mind immediately for me was when the Chicago branch of Occupy Wall Street was on the corner of Jackson and LaSalle. And that pattern of arbitrary enforcement of petty quality of life ordinances that are really just designed to make somebody go away. You can't be on the grass, you gotta be on the sidewalk. You gotta be on this part of the sidewalk and not that part of the sidewalk. Whereas you are a location-specific protest, so it's more important to you to stay put.
You will be arrested, sir. You understand what I told you? That's all you need to know. You voice your opinion the way you want, sir. Don't step on the property.
Protesters frequently blockade buildings, and frequently that is an essential part of the point they're trying to make. What makes this particular issue difficult is it's not just people going into a building to spend money. It's people going into a building for a private medical procedure that the law recognizes as a fundamental constitutional right.
You're going to try to get it. Stand up, everybody. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up and lock arms.
Lock arms.
Lock arms, everybody.
Lock arms at the door.
Stand up and lock arms.
As violence aimed at reproductive care centers increased in the 90s, legislation attempted to address the issue. The FACE Act was passed in 1994, making it a federal crime to use force or physically obstruct someone from entering a clinic. Local municipalities, like Chicago, have since made buffer zone laws mandating how far protesters must stay from clinics. In 2014, the Supreme Court overturned a Massachusetts buffer zone law that may threaten similar laws around the country. Aurora, Illinois, has no buffer zone law.
As clinic escorts, it's our job to be the peacekeepers and to be the calming force. Our goal is to be there for the patients and to make sure that they have a peaceful passage into our clinic doors.
We have to stand up for our rights, and sometimes that means filing suit. And those lawsuits have been critical in keeping our First Amendment rights alive.
The thing about the application of law to protest is that what's done to a pro-life group can be done to a pro-choice group. We're both acknowledging that the reality on the streets simply is not reflected in the law. What you're doing is a response to that. Free assembly is protected, but research the place, time, and manner restrictions in your area and whether you need a permit. Some actions, such as those blocking access to clinics, are illegal, even if some groups consider them protest. Filing a lawsuit can lead to unexpected precedents. Try and negotiate on the ground instead.